So joining me now, we're going to talk to a Lafayette resident and a member of the New Orleans Saints Super Bowl winning team, the '09 team. Played safety, got his Super Bowl ring on right now.
Yeah.
That's pretty. Mr. Chris Reis. And you can learn more about Chris at chrisreis.com. But we're going to learn more about Chris right now and talk about the Super Bowl. How are you today, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
When it gets to be Super Bowl week each year, do you get more media requests than normal because you have a moment in Super Bowl history?
Yeah, I get it. This is the time of the year that I get busy from you guys just asking me, hey, talk about the Super Bowl again. Let me know how it's all going. And it's always fun to relive a moment like that.
Well, your motto is live for more.
Mm-hmm.
How did that motto come to be?
That's a funny story. Me and my dad ended up writing a book right after the recovery of the onside kick in Super Bowl 44 and winning that. So we ended up writing a book, and it's just a story of me and my dad's relationship. My dad left when I was 2 years old. He struggled with addictions his whole life. And so we got back together. My dad came to know Christ and found God at the age of 47, and I helped lead him to that. And it's really a recovery of a relationship. But more than anything else, as we were writing the book, we just thought, and we were praying through it, just what does our motto want to be? What are we trying to accomplish? And really, what we wanted people to do is just to live for more than just the hype, live for more than just the world, that there's a God out there that loves you and that you can live for more. And we dealt with a lot of addicts, and that was a big motto for them: live for more than your addiction. And it helped them move past that shame. And just that little motto, it drives people to say, live for more. I can live for more. I can do that.
What's an NFL locker room like for somebody as because we've had Heath Evans on the show, and he's how do I put this? He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Abrasive is totally the wrong word. He's just a little more.
He's out there.
He's up. He's kind of like you seem to be a little more lax and like, hey, and he's like, listen, this is how it is. So with your personality, it is a football locker room. What's that like? Kind of being a man of faith that was raised and to believe. I know you were at Georgia Tech. You led was it a prayer group or
FCA Fellowship of Christian
There you go.
Athletes.
So what's it like in an NFL locker room for a man of faith?
I mean, I kind of tell people this. It's just like you going to work, right? If you're a man or a woman of faith, or even not, you have people in your workplace that believe in different things, and so there's always going to be the tug and pull and the clash of believing in different things. At the end of the day, what I think was great about that locker room is we were all family. No matter what color you are, what race you are, background, everything else, what belief. When we stepped on the football field, we became a family. And when you bleed and sweat together and you do stuff like that together, you grow together. And the NFL locker room is like none other. You're dealing with guys with money, power, fame. I mean, you can't tell these guys what to do. And so what I figured out was I'm not going to win them over by preaching to them and by going around to them. That's not my style. I'm going to live it for them. I want them to question when all of them are just cussing, and that's just kind of I'm not going to do that. That's not me. I'll choose to use other words. And they notice those little things, and it's those little things that make you big. And then you'll have the rookies that'll start to ask you, like, how come you're so different than them? Or how come you don't come out with us on Friday nights when we're going out and partying? Well, here's why I don't do that. And it opens up doors. And so for me, the first thing, before anybody ever reads the Bible or anything like that, usually they read people first. And so I want them to read me, and then I can point them to what the truth is and how that'll set them free. So that was my thing. And I loved being in a locker room like that. I love those guys. Those are my brothers, no matter what they believed. And I'm called to love people, and that's what I do.
Chris Reis is our guest, former New Orleans Saints safety. Well, football has certainly been was a job and has been a platform for you. When did you begin playing football?
Man, I think when did I begin? It was maybe third grade when I started, third or fourth grade, and I ended up playing football because all my friends were playing football. I didn't really know how to play football, and the the position they put me at was right guard, and I was a right guard. And that's what's so funny. People laugh all the time. I don't see you as a right guard. I wasn't. I had the forearm pads on.
Do you ever tell Jari, hey, look, watch out. I'm about to.
I did.
You're all pro, but I'm going to take your job.
I told him,
Joking.
I was like, dude, I can take you. You know that. No, what's funny is I would run scout team. I wasn't on defense. I would run scout team, and I actually, on scout team, was the running back and the quarterback. Well, I would outrun them all, and I would end up beating the first team defense. Finally, the coach said, I think he's kind of better than just a right guard. And so they ended up moving me middle of the year to running back and quarterback, and that kind of took off. And I realized that I was good at it, and it was a lot of fun.
You ended up, you went to Georgia Tech. We mentioned it briefly. And then, your story not uncommon. I mean, a lot of guys play in the NFL, and fan bases will remember a guy. And you have a Super Bowl moment, so maybe some more people outside of the Saints fan base would know who you are because of that one moment. That's how big that Super Bowl platform is. But not an uncommon story, undrafted and just fighting to get in. Jake Delhomme's from down here, and he's been on a number of shows this week, and he often talks about, NFL Europe and kind of at least breaking in the league with the Saints, and then they didn't want to start him, and then Carolina and the journey. So what was that journey like? Because I know, a brief period of time with Atlanta, and then when NFL Europe was still around, you went overseas, right?
That was me. I was undrafted free agent from Atlanta. All the Saints fans are booing right now, but yeah,
well, you're booing too. I mean,
I'm booing too.
Fan,
yeah,
right?
So I'm a Saints
the
fan.
Dirty
So
Birds.
I didn't like it, but I ended up, not really making it with them. Got cut. I thought my career was over. I had no idea. This was the 2006 season. At the end of the season, the Saints called and they said, "Hey, we want to pick you up and bring you on over to NFL Europe." So I got married. 2 weeks later, me and my wife went over to Germany to play in NFL Europe, and we just had a blast, man. God, like that was so much fun. I made the All-World team. That was the last year that the NFL Europe was in existence in 2007. So
just in the nick of time.
I know.
1 year earlier.
One year earlier. I mean, exactly. So it was definitely divine, and so ended up coming back, making practice squad with the Saints in 2007. And then 2 weeks into the season, after the second game, the guy in front of me went down. I think it was Jay Bellamy. He ended up going down, and they said, "Chris, you're coming up." I remember playing my first game, and it was a Monday night game against the Titans.
It was a brutal game. Deuce tore his ACL, and it was
man.
a rough start to that season.
And it was a ton of fun, and I mean, I had a blast. I never thought I'd be playing in the NFL.
So do you have to pinch yourself sometimes? Like, I'm in the league right now.
All the time. But there was always that drive to prove myself, to prove I'm better than this, I'm better than this. It was never like I wanted to start on defense. That's my goal. I knew my role. I knew I'm okay with that. You know, I heard someone say, grow where you're planted. And God planted me as a special teamer. And I was good with that. And so I wanted to be the best special teamers I could. And ended up, kind of, people were looked at me as a captain at the end of it. I was on a Pro Bowl ballot to be picked, as far as along the league as a special teams representative. So to be one of the best at what I did, I was honored to do that, and I was glad to do that.
Talking about special teams, I think of the Super Bowl team. Courtney Roby, really big on special teams.
Huge.
Jonathan Casillas. I mean, guys that I think Jonathan's still in the league.
Oh, yeah.
Courtney, I don't believe is, but
No.
my guess is three guys. And Casillas has settled into a linebacker role, but at that point in time, he was an undrafted guy. Roby was drafted as a receiver in Tennessee, didn't make it. You were undrafted. So when you looked across the board at special teams, you're looking at these guys that said, look, I'm on a special team. I'm going to be as good at this as I possibly can be. And, objectively, I think Thomas was hurt this year, but he's been consistently good.
Absolutely.
Made it to a Pro Bowl. But I'd say the last couple of years, overall, the special teams hadn't been great for the Saints. A lot of folks, they mentioned the turnovers. They remember the offense. That 2009 team, that was the best year of special teams the Saints have probably had since. I mean, I'd have to go look it up, but going back to the 90s, I mean, it was a year where that unit was really, really special.
Yeah, and it was. We worked together as a team. It was all three phases. I mean, if you look back at that team, you remember, you remember Drew and Reggie and all of those guys, and you remember the defense and the takeaways and all of those guys. But if you really look back too, special teams gets overshadowed a little bit more, and that was before all the rule changes. So special teams actually did stuff back then, whereas
It
versus
wasn't a
now,
touchback every time.
every time,
Yeah.
and now it's they're kind of taking out of it, obviously for health reasons. I understand, but that removed a lot of jobs, and so now people are more vying for a offense or defensive spot than saying I'm going to make the team for special teams, and that's a shame because that opened the door for a lot of guys to get looked at to then start on defense or
And,
offense.
I think of you and, of course, one of the more famous players ever, Steve Gleason.
Oh,
I mean, he doesn't make the team
yeah.
unless special teams is what it was. And it's something I guess a lot of folks probably don't think about. The rule changes more touchbacks. The coach is a lot more likely to say, well, we're not going to have nearly as many kick returns, and so I'll get 2 guys, and maybe I don't need 4. And I get that there are more than 4 guys on the field for kicks and punts, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like 4 or 5 core special teams guys. Now it's like I'll get 2, and then I'll kind of alternate with the others if he'll be offense, defense, and special.
And that's what it ends up being. I mean, you see it. I was talking with Thomas last year during the season. I went up there for a game, and we were just talking. He said it's just different now, and I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, we don't have a core group of guys that like they love special teams and that's what they do. They know their role, they know their job. They're the captains of the special team. They lead the film room. We don't have that camaraderie. These guys are all more about offense, defense, and special teams is kind of a side note. And that's a shame because I think unfortunately, the rule changes have affected that and their mindset. Now the coaches look at it as special teams is not as important. I need to get a guy who can play defense, and this guy may not be the best special teamer, or he may not care about special teams. And it was all about a matter of want and passion. The guys that were on special teams were a little crazy. I mean, you have to be a little crazy. And you only had 20, maybe 30 plays during the game to make a name for yourself and to help your team. And so you tried to capitalize on every single play.
Chris Reis, our guest, former New Orleans Saints safety, a Lafayette resident for the last few years. We've talked about his faith. We'll get more into it down the line. The 09 team, when did you guys realize, because you were there before 09.
Yeah.
When did you realize that season, this is different? This has a chance to be something really special.
I think we didn't realize it until, I would probably say the 5th or 6th, maybe even the 7th game, until we started saying, we're winning all of these games. We're not just winning, we're blowing them out. And it was decisive victories. We were head and shoulders above the rest. But what our coaches did a great job of is humbling ourselves. Human nature is you have success, you tend to relax. And that doesn't change in the NFL, right? You win 8 straight games, you're thinking, we're good. We can beat anybody. It's a good mentality to have, but the flesh side says, let's relax and not do as much. And our coaches, we blow a team out by 40 points. They come in the next day screaming at us. We we had the angriest undefeated coaches in the league, because they came in and Greg would say, you gave up 350 yards to this team, even though we blew them out by 60 points, and it kept us fresh and on our heels. It kept us sharp. But more than anything else, I think our practice habits are really, it's really what makes or breaks a Super Bowl team.
That season, aside from the championship game in the Super Bowl, what's a memory that stands out?
I tell this story a lot because it means so much to me. Was St. Louis? We were playing at St. Louis.
We mentioned Courtney Roby had
Courtney
a
Roby,
kick return for a touchdown in that
Special
game.
teams played great, but if you remember, we didn't play great that game. We were losing, and it was just a tight game. I remember Tracy Porter went down with a knee injury. And we thought he was over. And Tracy was having a great year. And we thought it was over for him. And I remember after we won that game, we went in the locker room, and I'll never forget this. I go in there. I'm like, I need to go talk to Tracy, see how he's doing. Well, all the other DBs are in there too. And so we gather around him, and we just start praying for him. And we're just loving on him, hugging him. He's crying his eyes out. And so that takes the game from just a game to a family. And that's what I remember, one of the best memories I remember. And what the crazy thing is he found out later that his MRI wasn't that bad. And so, but it was the band of brothers. That's what people don't see. They don't see that the camera never makes it in the locker room and sees us doing those things and loving on each other, and the relationships that are built through that, and the care that we have for each other. They just see the on-field stuff. And so those are the things that I remember the most.
Right. We remember Porter's picks.
Right.
And earlier in the season, NFC Championship game, objectively, when I'm on the air, typically, Chris, the Saints play bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And when they play good, I'll tip my cap to them. But a lot of folks know that I was raised as a Saints fan. I mean, my parents, my mother grew up down the street from Tulane Stadium. She was at the first game ever. Yeah. So we went to games when the Saints weren't that good. We would make the drive, season tickets. So being at that NFC Championship game just as a fan and not in the press box before they had the press box way at the top, because I could have gone and covered it, and I said, no, I'm going with my family, and I'm just going to be nervous the whole time, and I want to be able to scream. That was such a, from a fandom standpoint, it was so surreal in the stands. You're down on the field.
Yeah.
The offense didn't have a great game, but 4 turnovers forced by the defense. Speaking of special teams, Hartley kicks it through. I mean, what was it like on the field? It's not the Super Bowl, but for that, being at home in that dome, what's it like down there?
That was better than the Super Bowl, I'll tell you that right now. Winning the Super Bowl, it was an experience, but winning that way, that was the Super Bowl to us. Winning that way in your home stadium with your home fans in that kind of capacity.
So the feeling, I'm sorry to cut you. So the feeling when Hartley kicked it was more euphoric than when the final seconds ticked off in Miami.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, that's how crazy that was. And I think it was because of the way that we won and who were we with. And we were with all our fans. And it was just, we fought tooth and nail for that game. That game, man, it was back and forth. And people, I mean, they said it beforehand that this was going to be the Super Bowl winner. This was going to be the Super Bowl. I mean, they deemed it. And defensively, I'll never forget that game. Obviously, Bounty Gate, and all that junk that came out afterwards, which was just blown way out of proportion. But that was just a game that I enjoyed so much. And when he kicked that kick, it's what every kid dreams of, running up, rushing up, jumping on it, hugging, crying, and everybody in the stands is doing the same thing. And it was nice to celebrate with family.
There was this older couple that had sat in front of us for so many years. They're from New Orleans East, Mr. Lionel and Miss Letitia, and the kick went through. And, we'd always give high fives and stuff. She turned around and she was crying. And she goes, we're going to the Super Bowl. And I hugged this old woman. I lifted her up. And it was
awesome.
It was such a surreal moment.
Yeah.
Super Bowl 44. Let's just get right to it. I'm sure you've been asked 100 times.
Yep.
Ambush, onside kick. What is it like in that pile? You're underneath there.
I get that question a lot. It's something you don't train for. It's something you don't prepare for. It's I equate it to it felt like kind of a Mack truck was just like sitting on top of me with all those people. And people ask like, oh, do they do things dirty? Did they pull and hit you? And you know what? I'm so focused on the ball, I don't even know what happened. It didn't even matter. All I know is I'm holding onto that ball for dear life and saying, I'm not letting go. And it was just chaos. It was just mass pandemonium down under that pile.
It's a long
63
pile.
seconds.
It must have felt like 5 minutes for you.
Oh,
huh?
I mean, like you said, you don't train for something like that. You don't go in the weight room, get on the ground, get in an awkward position and say, try to hold the ball. I mean, you just don't do that. So it was all about heart and passion. Greg Williams, defensive coordinator, came up to me right afterwards and said that had nothing to do with X's and O's. That was a saying that we had was, you can draw up the best play in the world, but it's heart and passion that executes it. And that's and that to me was one of the biggest compliments I've ever got, because he was saying that took heart and passion to do. It didn't take X's and O's. Coaches can't draw up a pile. You have to just go and do it. You got to execute it. And it was all about who wanted it more.
Did you have it, where was it, between your legs?
So what ended up happening was the ball comes at me. A lot of you guys have probably all seen it, on replay. And this is a bang, bang play. It's not like it's like slow motion like you see on NFL films. It slips in between my arms as I'm going down, in between my legs. I'm on the ground. Roman and the other Colt player jumps on top of me. And so I pinned the ball against my thigh, my right thigh. And so I'm in the most exposed position possible. Well, one of the Colts player jumps in, and then Casillas comes in and just kind of spears the pile. And when he did that, it jarred Roman enough to where I then could move my arm and pull up the ball. But I was still in an exposed position. So there were a ton of arms and hands on the ball. And so I know why the refs were like, we don't know who has the ball. I had it, and I was pulling it in.
Sure.
But there were other hands on top of the ball. So you were like, who really has it?
Who has the kind of, you're judging, who's got the most possession of the ball
exactly.
right now.
And I think that's what they were waiting on. And I'm gonna give it up to them, the refs, because they waited. It was 63 seconds, but they waited until they knew who had the ball, and they said, okay, now we know. And I remember under that pile, I'm screaming at Casillas because I didn't know if me and him were fighting for it. I didn't know who was fighting. So I'm like, Casillas, I got it. You can let go. Well, he wasn't going to let go either. Nobody's letting go.
Sure.
And finally, I rip it out, and they say white ball. And so that's when I just stand up real quick.
And you had the ball in your hand, and
I'm
unleashing a primal scream.
Exactly right. Running to the sideline, slapping the head.
What a moment, man. What a moment. It's 63 seconds, and look, sports doesn't define your life, and you've made that very clear.
Absolutely.
But that moment has helped give you a platform to share your faith in other things. And you don't know when it's going to happen in a sport, but in the Super Bowl, we've had Thomas Morstead on the show many times, and he talks about how he was terrified.
Yeah.
He's a rookie kicker, and it's like a punter, and it's like, okay, we're doing ambush. In the locker room, Sean Payton says we're doing ambush. What are you and Roman and Casillas and what are you guys? Are y'all nervous, terrified, or are y'all?
I wasn't supposed to recover the ball, so I wasn't
Roman
really
was,
that.
Right?
No, Roman was, yeah. So I wasn't nervous. I guess you could say I was a little apprehensive of is this going to work, but you got to remember, I mean, we went 13-0. We trusted our commander in chief. You know what I mean? When he made a call, we trusted it and we went with it. We don't always have to agree with it, but we went with it. And so when Coach Payton came in and said we're doing this, we're all like, let's go. I mean, go big or go home. That was always what we wanted to do with the Saints. Go big or go home. We're going to take a risk. Might as well do it swinging. I mean, and I didn't realize the magnitude of that play until afterwards. Until I'm walking with Drew, and Drew goes up on the podium, and all the minions are down there,
Yeah.
And I'm with, and then you guys, media, sticking mics in my face left and right like I was Drew Brees, and I didn't know it was that big of a deal. I literally didn't know it was that big of a deal.
It's I was at the Super Bowl, and when you talk to fans or players, it all kind of doesn't sink in right away.
Yeah.
And for you, it was like, well, we're champions, but I made that play, but that was just whatever.
Yeah.
At what point did it sink in like, holy cow, we're world champions, and that play is going to be remembered for, it's, I don't want to say you're a footnote in it. I always feel like you don't get it quite. It's just kind of like Sean Payton made this decision, but I'm always like, but Thomas and Chris and Casillas, they were you forget. Most of the commentary is about Sean Payton having the
guts to call
make the call, but you guys without you being underneath that pile,
So
who knows?
Coach Payton came up to me afterwards when we had our ring ceremony. This was in the summer, and he came up to me I'm sorry, this was right after the game. We're celebrating. We're in the locker room, so all the media's kind of not in there yet. Everything else, we're celebrating in the locker room. And he comes up to me, and I didn't know what he was going to say. I mean, me and Sean have a great relationship, but we're not buddy by any means.
Sure.
And he comes up to me, and this is what he said. He says, "Thanks for making me look good." So, he knew that the call was going to be probably more important than who recovered it.
Sure.
And he knew, hey, thanks for making me look good. Because he knew if that went wrong, it wasn't going to be my head on a platter. It was going to be his. And so, to me, I think I'm okay being a footnote. That's the cool thing. And the reaction that people have when they say, whoa, you're the guy that recovered the onside kick? It's fun to watch.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I imagine you go talk to some kids, the youth, and it's like, he won a Super Bowl. I'm sure there are always maybe a few diehard Saints fans that are like, I know that guy.
Yeah.
But for a young kid, that they were at this point teenagers. I mean, you go back 6 years ago. They're like 9, 10, and it's like, oh, I guess you recovered that fumble. I kind of remember that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's given me a platform. That 15 minutes of fame. I didn't realize it was that big until I think it was a couple days after Peter King wrote a story on the whole thing, and I was named in it, and that over and over again. And I think I started to realize, like, this is a huge deal. And then waking up in Miami the next day after, they talked about the onside kick, they talked about me, and I'm just like, wow, this is a big deal, I guess, And I started to realize, and then naming the play as one of the top play in Saints history, and then number 14 and most overall, and I was just blown away. Like, I'm going to be remembered, for one, in Saints history forever, and two, almost anytime they talk about a Super Bowl, it's probably going to come up.
If you talk about best Super Bowl plays or best Super Bowl moments, that's always
it's going to be in there for the next 100 years.
Cool.
It might be in the top 100, and that's pretty neat.
That is. Chris Reis is our guest, former New Orleans Saints safety. Great stuff, great memories here from the Super Bowl season. Last Super Bowl question, Chris. The Super Bowl is this Sunday. If you were going to give advice to any players in the game, what would it be?
I think Roman knows, because he's on Carolina. He knows this. You got to stay focused. The Super Bowl is a circus in and of itself, and it's a good thing. It's fun. It's to enjoy. At the same time, it's so hard to stay focused on what your job is because of all the stuff going on around you. And so I think what we had a great thing with the Saints was, how do we stay focused on the game? Not the media, not the glitz and the glam, not anything else, but just playing a football game. Because when you go out there, it's still 22 guys on a field padding up, smacking each other in the face. I know there's 100 million people watching, but at the same time, it's just a game. And I played it up in my mind to be bigger than it actually was. And when I got on the field, I got my first hit in, and I kind of slowed down a little bit. My heart rate slowed down, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. This is just another football game. Let's go and play it. So I think it's staying focused on the task and the job at hand, and then executing that.
The next year, I know you suffered an injury, I think week 3 or 4.
Yep.
And IR. And then the following year, you got cut at the last round of cuts, just before the active roster. Two-part question. What's that like? Yeah. And the follow-up question is, did you want to keep playing, or had you decided, okay, I'm moving on? Like, what's the process like?
Getting cut, or I would say, just in layman terms, for I say regular people, getting fired. You literally get fired. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're getting fired. It's never fun. It's emotional. What's so funny is the coaches all the assistant coaches were very shocked that I got cut. And they said, last night, they told me this the day I got cut. They said, last night you were one of the 53 on the board. I don't know what happened this morning. And so it's just interesting how things change really fast in the NFL. If they see somebody, it's a money game and a numbers game, right? They always want somebody younger, faster, stronger,
and cheaper.
Cheaper.
Right.
That's the biggest thing, cheaper. So it's never fun, because you create so many great memories and relationships there. But I'll tell you what, walking out of that facility, I could hold my head high knowing I had done everything I could to serve this organization, serve the players, the relationships, the front office staff, and made some great relationships that will never be broken. And I was okay with that. And I remember, I hope he's okay with me telling the story, our DB coach at the time, he brought me in his office. It was the last person I talked to before walking out of the facility, and he just starts crying. Literally, grown man, pulls me in his office, starts bawling. He can't even get a word out. And he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, "You've affected my life more than you'll ever know, and this is way outside of football." He said, "I'm so honored. I'm a better man of God because of you." And that, to me, I started breaking down crying right there. And I told myself I wasn't going to cry, but when he said that, it made me realize that this is not about football. It was never about that, and that God almost gave me a closure, saying, "I put you here for a reason, and now there's a next step in your journey."
Chris Reis is our guest. I'm glad you told that story for a number of reasons, because it's a good segue to the next question. But you made me think of something. The Hard Knocks show, as a viewer, I find it very very entertaining, and I know that it's TV, so they're going to play up some drama. And
oh yeah.
But having said that, I think the reality of, man, these guys' livelihood is on the line. It raises the stakes. Sean Payton has made it very clear he never wants to be on it. And he gave a reason recently. He said, I said when I got into this business, I would never want to be filmed cutting a player.
Yeah.
And you sharing the story of you and the DB coach and the emotion and the respect, that tells anybody listening why. I mean, it's not about Sean Payton as much as it is the relationship he has with some of his players. And it's like, this isn't TV. I mean, it is. I mean, football's on TV. That's where the money comes from. But you get what I'm saying. It's also reality. It's real life.
It's real life.
You tell somebody, hey, we're moving on. That's tough. But for you, I mean, your closure, what a story. So that happens. You leave the facility. Mm-hmm. What's the next step? Are you saying, okay, got the message, Scott, I'm moving on to something else? Yeah. Was it, I kind of want to maybe try to play for someone else? You call your agent. What happens after that?
So for me, it was call my agent. I still wanted to play. I still felt like I had some more time left in me. Unfortunately, nobody else really thought that. And so no one else gave me a shot. No, and so after that year closed, I kind of closed the door and said, okay, God, I'm moving on. The great thing about it was during that preseason, my first daughter was born. My first child, my little girl, was born. That changed me. I felt like God placed me from your identity was a football player, your job was a football player, now your job is a father. And to me, that role of a father is way more important. And it kind of took my focus off of it. So I think it was almost a blessing to have that happen when she was born. I got to spend a lot of time with her early on. I got to enjoy my family of not having to work for a while. And then it was a matter of, okay, now God, what do you want to do with me? And so once I kind of hung up the cleats, it was easy for me because my identity wasn't in being a football player. And so it was just saying, all right, this door's closed. What else do you have for me?
Your faith makes it easier said than done, right? Because for a lot of players, it's, I just had my first kid and I just got cut.
Yeah.
But you're looking at it as what a great opportunity. I mean, that does come from your faith.
Sure, absolutely.
You mentioned when we started the book you wrote with your dad. I know that kind of came after, but sort of, I'm sure it's a long story, so you can summarize it. But how you got from there to today? You've been in Lafayette for a couple years.
Yeah.
You do a lot of ministry. You're very open about your Christianity. And folks can learn more about chrisreis.com. You can learn about his book that he wrote with his dad. But how does post-football lead you to Cajun country?
Yeah, that is, and I'll try to give the short version of it. Honestly, after football, deciding what I'm going to do, my father and just all that he had battled with in our relationship, he was just wanting to help people. How can we help people? And I knew I had some luxury. I didn't want a job that I had to get into right away to make money. I knew I didn't have to do that. I had a little time. So I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking for a calling. And I knew I wanted to help people in some sort of capacity. So we got together. We wrote this book. And we traveled around the country for the next 2 years. Well, I ended up coming here to Lafayette. One of my best friends works at Our Savior's Church in Lafayette, and he's the worship pastor. And so he's like, bring Chris on down. He told the pastor, our senior pastor, Pastor Jacob Aranza, to come on down. He said, bring Chris on down. He's a great speaker, everything else. I come down. I speak on one of the football Sundays they have. I think it was Superbowl Sunday. And he ends up offering me a job. And I told him, no, I live in Georgia. I'm not moving my family all the way down here. All my family's in Georgia. And I grew up in Georgia. So all my family's there. My wife's from Nashville. It's only 4 hours away. So it's really close. Why would we come down here? My wife and I started praying about it. And we realized the Lafayette area has such a great community. And God was calling us here for a reason. And we sought some counsel and some wise counsel, and saw that down here, God could use us further than up there. And not just because my platform with the Saints and everything else, we needed community as a family, and we didn't have that. And one of the things Lafayette does so well is community. And so we ended up moving down 2 years ago and became a pastor, started work for the church, and just absolutely love it.
Do you kind of owe football and the Saints with the opportunity that's been given to you? Something you don't take lightly, but that platform has led you to this. Maybe if there's no NFL Europe for one extra year, who knows?
I mean,
it seems like there were so many steps in your journey right? To get you to where you're sitting here across from me today,
Yeah.
like, look at this weird guy asking me all these questions.
Right. I mean, it's crazy because it's like the string theory. How far back do you go, right? How far back do you go? All the way back? If my dad didn't leave when I was 2, would I have the drive to prove myself time and time again? I don't know. Would I make the same choices I made, if I didn't start in Georgia Tech versus if I did, or if I didn't move to linebacker my junior year? And so, I mean, it's like we can go all the way back and say, like, look at all that's happened. And the way I sum that up is like it's all God. And it's great to see the way his plan works out, and that no matter good, bad, ugly, it always works out to glorify him. And so at the end of the day, I can honestly say that the play that I made in the Super Bowl was not just for me. I hope that makes sense.
Sure.
It's not just for me. It was to utilize in order to have a platform for him. And to me, if I can use that to help people, I want to do it.
If someone's listening right now, you've
Yeah.
given us, your time, and I know you're busy. And I want to thank Sally Gilry, former UL associate head
Love
coach
Sally.
for the
She's
women's
awesome.
team.
She's
She is.
awesome.
Sally's great, and
Yeah.
she. I knew that she had worked with you, and I bothered her a lot. I said, I want to get Chris on the show. I want to talk to him. So thank you,
Yeah.
Coach, if you're listening. But I know you're busy, and so you've given your time. If somebody's listening, adult, kid, whoever, if they have somebody and they want to go where you're speaking, or
Yeah.
how do they do it?
They would just probably come to Our Savior's Church in Lafayette, Louisiana, honestly. Or you can go to my website. You can contact me through that as well if you're interested. But at Our Savior's Church, every Sunday I get up there. I do front end. I lead in prayer. And so you'll see me there. It's a great, if you're a churchgoer and you're saying, man, I really want my buddy or my friend or my mom or my dad to start coming to church. I always tell the people in our church, use me. Tell them, say, you can come see a Super Bowl ring if you want. We have a Super Bowl champion who works for our church. Not a lot of churches can really say that. So I tell them, use me for that, because that's what God has used it for. So if you want to come see me, you want to come hear me, I speak there often. If you have kids, we have a youth group every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. You can come to Lafayette campus, Our Savior's Church, in Lafayette campus. You can go to oursaviourschurch.com for more information, and you can come hear me speak and all that stuff, get plugged in, and what we do for the youth is tremendous.
Wrapping it up,
Yeah.
getting back to football, how often do you speak? And I guess how many teammates from the Super Bowl team do you still talk to?
There's probably a handful of guys that we'll text every now and then. Sometimes we'll jump on a group text and just say hey to each other and stuff like that. We're all busy, have separate lives and families and growing families, and
Sure.
I'm excited for a possible Super Bowl reunion. Whether I guess we missed the 5 years, so it's gonna have to
One
be 10
day.
now.
One day.
But that'll be pretty monumental, and I love those guys. I love Drew, love Roman. I love all those guys. They're like my brothers.
Who's the funniest guy on that team?
Charles Grant by far. Charles Grant is hilarious.
Never stops talking.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious.
Do you watch? I mean, you're busy on Sundays.
Sure.
Do you watch the Saints now?
I try to. I DVR it and try to watch them and zoom through the commercials because I actually like that better. A lot of times I don't get a chance to, and that's okay. People think I know a lot about the Saints right now. Hey, did you hear about this? And I don't follow along.
I just hope they win, right?
I just hope they win, yeah, and I'm cheering for them, and they're my team. They'll always be my team forever in my heart. So no matter what happens, no matter who's the coach, no matter who's there, they're always going to be my team. I'm always going to have a connection to the team and the family around it and the fans.
You briefly mentioned Bounty Gate, and I think as more time went on, at first some of us were like, whoa, what's the deal?
Yeah.
As more time went on, the truth kind of came to light. Is it hard to kind of let some of that go, knowing that, they did as wrong and they made it into something it wasn't because they had lawsuits, because they did something wrong back in the day by not giving all the information to players that were suffering from concussions, and now years later they're going to use us as kind of a scapegoat. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here.
Sure.
But you're not disagreeing with me. You're over there nodding your head. Yes.
Yeah.
Is it hard to let that go? Because does anyone come up to you and ever ask you about it or associate you guys with that?
I do get questions sometimes about it, for sure, every now and then. Not a ton. Most people don't care and I'll say this: I can let it go because we won the Super Bowl and because I know the truth.
Sure.
And so I don't care what anybody else says. They weren't sitting in that locker room. They weren't sitting in that meeting room. They didn't know the conversations. They didn't know our intention and our heart behind it. They had no idea. I mean, it's the game of football. You're going to get hurt. You're trying to hurt people. But in the game of football, I'll just say, I make this comment all the time. In the NFL, if you're trying to intentionally hurt somebody, you're not going to have your job because you're not going to play well. You go where the ball is. You don't go where to hurt the man. It just doesn't even make any sense at all.
Sure.
And people don't realize NFL is more of a psychological warfare than even probably more physical. And so there's a whole nother level to it. So most people, when they ask about it or try to associate or say, you guys cheated, I kind of brush it off and just kind of tell them, you weren't in that locker room. You don't even know. You weren't in that meeting room. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I just kind of chuckle at it and let it go because at the end of the day, I know the truth. And if I know the truth, I'm okay with that.
And you got on a Super Bowl ring.
Come on.
Do you have a prediction for Sunday's game, Denver or Carolina? I mean, you're friends with Roman.
Yeah, I know. Man, I don't know. This is a tough one. I always got to go with defense. Number one defense is going to win. That's just my. That's
going with the Broncos.
I mean, I'm. You asked me who I think is going to win, not who I want to win. There's a difference. So for me, I got to go defense. Defense wins championships. So I think you need to watch that side of it. If whatever defense plays good, not offense, defense is going to win the game.
Last question. You mentioned the moment with Tracy Porter in the 2009 season, and we talked about the championship game and the Super Bowl. From all your years playing football, whether it be youth, high school at Roswell High or Georgia Tech or NFL Europe or with the Saints, what's your favorite memory from your playing days?
Wow. You pulled out a favorite memory, didn't you?
Last question.
I know.
Got to end on a high note.
It's funny. I don't remember a lot of the on-field stuff. I don't remember a lot of the plays that I've made or the games that we've won, you know, whether it be at Georgia Tech when we beat a number 6 Auburn and tore down the goalposts. Like, nobody tears down goalposts anymore, so that was pretty cool. Or, I mean, even winning the Super Bowl or NFC Championship Game. I can think of so many plays in my mind and so many games. I mean, at Georgia Tech when we played Clemson with Calvin Johnson there, and we scored, I think, 14 points in the last, 30 seconds to win the game, and I was a part of that, a huge part of it. So, I don't know if there's one play that stands out, but I remember so much more of the relationships and the situations around football more than anything else.
I find that's what pretty much every player says. They talk about, what do I miss the most? Not the games, it's that locker room, that camaraderie, and the relationships.
It's not just a cliche saying that we all say. It's truly because when you realize that football is just a game and just a job, you value who you're doing it with. I'm a firm believer. You can be picking up trash on the side of the road if you're doing it with people you love and you enjoy. It's gonna be fun.
Chris Reis has been our guest, the former New Orleans Saints safety. You can learn more about him and his faith and his motto of live for more at chrisreis.com. He is on Twitter at chrisreis39. Man, this was a lot of fun. I know you're busy, and I kept you we're going on almost 45 minutes now. So
that's awesome.
But story of your faith in football and everything, and I know you and your wife have 3 at another on the way.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck, all that, man, and God bless. Thanks for the time.
Thanks a lot.
That is New Orleans Saints safety Chris Reis here on The Great Scott Show, the Great Sports Callers Open Think Tank on ESPN 1420 and .com.